Members, the House will please come to order. Members, we're going to continue with our business of the day. Messages from the Senate.
Message 458. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 127, Public Health Amendments. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 23, noes 6, 1 excused. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 459. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 254, Transportation Computer System. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 19, noes 11. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 460. Senate File 130, Mr. Speaker, Senate File 130, Charter Schools. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 27, noes 3. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
All right. Representative Martinez, privilege of the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor. I would like to draw everybody's attention to this gentleman in the gallery, in the north part of the gallery, Mr. Chris Robarge. And little bit about Chris. I just wanted to say he, within the last hour, as I hope, a revenue builder, he just incorporated a small business called First Amendment Sound Productions LLC. So hopefully his small business can have success in this Wyoming environment. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. And I happen to know that Mr. Robar sings karaoke too. Just saying. All right. And I do know that firsthand knowledge. Yes, Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick update on your Joint Conference Committee Number 2 on House Bill 36. We did not meet at 3 o'clock as advertised, but that was because the folks across the way have not yet appointed a light committee, and so they're not back in until 4:30, and until then, we are on standby. Thank you.
We're not standing by too much longer, folks. I can tell you that. All right. We're at that order of business of consideration of joint conference committee reports. First one, conference committee is number 1 on Senate File 130, Chairman Summers.
Mr. Speaker, I would move message number 407 on Senate File 130 and ask for your favorable consideration. And so remember, this is the charter school bill. And so what this body did through your education committee is we changed the authorizer. So in the original bill, the authorizer was this, could either be a school board or the SLIB. And then there were a bunch of provisions that had been taken out and made into a completely different charter school process. And so the House Education said, well, we didn't really like SLIB, so we brought the authorizer back to the superintendent of public instruction, but only upon an election. And then we put in place that you could only create 3 schools. We were going to study it in the interim, and then after the 3 schools would take further study by the superintendent and further authorization. So we met with the body across the way, and they went, we just don't think the election's doable, possible. So how we compromised is we said, okay, we'll go back to your original authorizer, the SLIB board, but we're going to retain only 3 schools and the study during the interim. And so basically we'd go back to the authorizer. We don't change any of the other language in the bill anywhere, but we go back to their authorizer, the SLIB board. And then you still have all those precautions in place. We have a stop dead date on 3 schools and further study and a study in the interim. So that is the message.
Any discussion? Any discussion on joint conference number 1, Senate File 130? Madam Minority Floor Leader Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the conference committee. If you remember, we had long discussions about this bill. And one of the reasons that the body got to the yes was the House Standing Committee amendment, which obligated an election. That was an important element to this bill. And now what we're allowing is for a charter school, and we're almost going to double the number of charter schools that we would have in the state with an increase of 3, to be established without an election and going to the SLIB board. The SLIB board, which has on it the superintendent of public instruction, but also has the governor and so much else to do, that authorizing schools is not in its wheelhouse. We put in statute a bill, a series of exceptions to what we have right now when it comes, what we would allow if we put this bill into statute is allowing for private charter schools as well as charter schools that are wholly virtual. And we put that into statute right now, right? With having the SLIB board be the authorizer. I'd ask us to vote no, and honestly, let the interim committee do the work that is its, I think, number 2nd or 3rd priority, which is to really take a good, hard look at our charter school statutes. We need to do that, but this bill is not ready to be put into our statutes. So I'd ask us to vote no.
Thank you. Any other member? First time. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ask for an aye vote. And I don't have the exact information here. It was on my computer at home. I was working on a different project over the weekend. And I noted, though, when I started going back through bills on the legislative website, that I ran one in 2015, and I was not the first that was making some attempt to loosen up the ability to provide options for students in the public school system. Remember, these are public schools. I think it's been at least 2005. I think we just need to break it very loose, and really to say that we're doubling the amount of schools by adding 3. Well, that just shows what the pathetic current situation is. I really think that great, they're going to study it. Good, if this is what it took to get a study out of the education establishment, that's great. And I look forward to the results of the study. And obviously more, hopefully, will be heard. I really think it's time to move forward this very small little step. We loaded $1.25 billion or whatever it was on the SLIB board last year. I'm sure they can contemplate 3 little charter school applications in their spare time. Please vote aye.
Thank you. Representative Simpson, first time on
Thank
the conference committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, I encourage an aye vote on what the conference committee has done. This bill came out of the Senate, and it was a strong bill, and we improved it. We made a lot of changes, both in the Education Committee and here on the floor, and we sent it to the committee to resolve the differences, and they've done a nice job. I recommend that we approve this and proceed.
Any other members? First time. First time. I'm looking online, seeing no one. Representative Flitner online, and then we'll go to Representative Gray in the chamber. Representative Flitner, Chairman Flitner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I wondered if there was any resolution as to the question of O&M and buildings and the cost to the state of Wyoming for a charter school.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Urge an aye vote on the conference committee report. Remember that the big change over here on this bill was this 3-school limit on this sort of pilot project to initiate a study. And while I wasn't thrilled about that amendment, that was the big change, and that remains in the conference committee report. So it is basically a pilot to initiate a study. And our charter school the state's charter school statute has tremendous problems in it, and this is the beginning of getting a fix to it. So please vote aye.
Thank you. Any other members first time? Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To answer the question that came up a minute ago about the cost to the state for facilities and maintenance on those facilities, none of those issues have been resolved throughout this process. So that is still a concern. The one repealer is still in place where it will repeal the statute that says if state funds are used to purchase or build the building, it should stay with the district. That is being repealed. So now if state funds are used to build or acquire a facility, that facility will stay with that charter school at the time that charter school goes out of business or closes up its shop. So I don't know. I still have a lot of concerns with this. I'm going to be voting no and would encourage a no vote as well. So again, a no vote would be a good idea here on the conference committee report.
Thank you. Any other member first time? Any other member first time? First time, last call. Second time before the movement. Second time, Chairman Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And my apologies kind of on the other amendment. So obviously, if we took the election out, we didn't need the amendment that funded the election, so that went away. The good representative that decreased the percentage that would go out to virtual schools, that amendment stayed. And then the good representative who lives out of the ocean, that amendment shows that it goes away, but it got embedded in the language. So it's there in a different form. So that's kind of the disposition of those other amendments.
I'm still stuck on that ocean, lives in the ocean thing, but that's okay. So members, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1 report to Senate File 130. A majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
Aye.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt excused. Clausen. Clifford.
No.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air. Excused. Flitner.
No.
Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan.
Aye.
Haroldson.
Aye.
Harshman. Heiner.
Aye.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
No.
Knapp.
Aye.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Martinez. Nyman. Newsom excused. Nicholas. Oakley.
No.
Obermuller.
No.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman excused. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe.
No.
Schwartz.
No.
Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith.
Aye.
Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit.
Aye.
Western.
Aye.
Worf. Williams excused. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Harshman, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 37 aye, 17 no, 6 excused.
By your vote, you've adopted Joint Conference Committee number 1 report to Senate File 130. Representative Martinez, please proceed with the privilege of the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my final one. I'll draw your attention to the, again, North Gallery, where my sister, her husband, and 2 children, if you would please stand. And we're here today mainly because Mark Anthony, who is the shorter one, he just received a State of Wyoming Southeast District Festival Award. Mark Anthony de la Cruz, along with his entire family, won this Excellent in Achievement Award. And so hats off to his mom and dad, Bernadette, Mauricio, and Gabriela de la Cruz, and excellent job, Mark Anthony.
Well done, Mark Anthony. And someday you'll be able to dress as stylish as this guy right here. Let me tell you, pretty impressive. Well done. Glad you're here with us today. Chairman Zwanitzer, could you come up here, please?
We are at that order of business of Joint Conference Committee Reports number 2 on House Bill 92. Speaker Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some members, I would move, Mr. Chairman, I'd move Joint Conference number 2 on House Bill 92. And as you'll recall, we had a first committee which needed to have a second committee so that we could bring in a new improvement. And if you'll look, earlier this session, I have the college, amendment, 2 colleges and within any word. This is and then we compared it to the pizza thing. Well, this is the policies amendment. So we had policies divided by 1 word. This is, I'm not kidding you, it's develop federal policies, land use policies. So we had policies. So anyway, so staff said, we should probably clean that up. So we know. So anyway, this was actually an act that we had just enacted. A House Joint Resolution, in fact, if I remember correctly, House Joint Resolution number 11, signed just last week. So as staff did their work, they found this. So while it is a 2.5-page amendment, it really is truly just to say, take 1 policies out of a double policies. So glad to stand for any policy questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion for the first time? Discussion for the first time, seeing no one online and no one standing in the room. Any further discussion? You are voting on Joint Conference Committee Report number 2 to House Bill 92. Majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
Aye.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt excused. Clausen. Clifford.
Aye.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air excused. Flitner.
Aye.
Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan. Hallinan.
Aye.
Haroldson.
Aye.
Harshman. Heiner.
Aye.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
Aye.
Knapp.
Aye.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Martinez. Nyman. Newsom excused. Nicholas. Oakley.
Aye.
Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman excused, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe,
Aye.
Schwartz,
Aye.
Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith,
Aye.
Stybar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit,
Aye.
Western,
Aye.
Wharf, Williams excused, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 54 aye, 6 excused.
By your vote, you've adopted Joint Conference Committee number 2 report to House Bill 92. And I'll thank you for the second unanimous vote I've received. This one in the affirmative instead of the negative when we failed it the first time. And I do want to give a special shout out. This was a pretty difficult conference committee to Representative Sherwood and Representative Provenza. This was a grueling one, so thank you for your assistance. That's the sound of the ocean you hear. Sorry, Representative Andrew. All right, members, so we have 2 conference committees that are meeting. One just departed right now on Senate File 121. They just departed. We should have a final report out on them with that. We're waiting. And then I believe House Bill 36, I think we're waiting on a conference committee on that as well. So we have 2 conference committees waiting. And then I think we have at least one bill, and I'll just tell the body and announce to the public, 173 is probably at an impasse right now. And we're letting our Senate colleagues think about their position, and maybe we continue and maybe we don't. So 2 bills really in the works right now that we're confident about. We'll get something brought to you. And then we have some signed and enrolled acts. We'll do that right now. Then we'll stand at ease probably for about a half an hour, or stand at ease for half an hour, which technically means hang around. We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. The first enrolled act for our consideration is 93.
House Enrolled Act 93, being original House Bill 127. An act relating to public health, amending and creating provisions governing the issuance of orders relating to the public health, amending provisions governing the appointment and oversight of the state health officer, providing applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 93, being original House Bill 127. I have so signed. Next enrolled act is 94.
House Enrolled Act 94, being original House Bill 254. An act relating to funding of government operations, providing funding for the replacement of a transportation computer system, creating an account, imposing an additional fee for driver's licenses, permits, and for duplicates and renewals, specifying the distribution of fees, making conforming amendments, assigning duties to the Department of Transportation and Department of Enterprise Technology Services for replacement of the revenue information system, requiring reporting and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 94, being original House Bill 254. I have so signed. Congratulations, Chairman Burkhart. All right, members, we have those 2 conference committees still at work. In fact, hopefully pretty soon on the 36, House Bill 36. Hopefully they'll convene pretty soon. And 121, as I said, is in progress and pending on 173. So with that, we'll stand at ease until 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Roscoe. Representative Roscoe, did you have something for the body? Representative Roscoe, you're still muted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege.
Please proceed, Representative Roscoe.
You don't have to look up in the balconies, members, because there is no one that has come down to see me, not the state championship ski teams or or my two sons or anybody. So, but I'm not taking it personally. I think it's the Zoom situation. But I did get a lot of calls and a lot of emails from my parts of my 3 different counties that I represent. And overwhelmingly, one thing came through, and that was that, first of all, my district is wildly conservative in one part and wildly liberal in another. But one thing that did come through overwhelmingly was that there was a great appreciation for our leadership. And they all said that they really appreciated the leadership keeping us on track and moving us forward. And I just thought we should all know that. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
So I don't know about the political leanings of folks, but I was most impressed by the wildly part. There seemed to be a unanimous consent on the wild thing. So thank you for that, Representative Roscoe. Appreciate that. So seeing no further business, waiting on bills and waiting on conference committees, we will stand at ease until 5 o'clock. Which means you can get up and move around. It's like an after action report here. Everybody's kind of stunned.
Yeah, so everybody knows, Joint Conference Committee number 2 on House Bill 36 will be meeting at 4:45 in room 210 downstairs, 110.
House will please come to order. I need a All right, members, we'll come back to order. Thank you very much. We've got still waiting on a couple conference committees or things coming from the Senate, but we're going to start our work with that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. The first enrolled act is 73.
Senate Enrolled Act 73, being original Senate File 38, an act relating to corporations, providing for the formation and management of decentralized autonomous organizations, providing definitions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 73, being original Senate File 38. I have so signed. Messages from the Senate.
Message 461. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 92, Revisers Bill. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 2 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 26, noes 1, excused 3. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 462. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with the Light Committee Number 2 from the House on amendments to House Bill 36. The Senate conferees are Senator Hicks, Senator Driscoll, Senator Kinsky. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
All right, members, we do have a joint conference committee report on House Bill 36. I'm surveying for Chairman Hunt. Chairman Hunt. Joint Conference Committee Number 2, House Bill 36, Chairman Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My apologies there. Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move Joint Conference Committee Number 2 to House Bill 36 and ask for your favorable consideration. So what we've done, we went back and met again with our counterparts across the hall. And so the new language would state that within the first 5 days, within the first 5 working days of the 2022 budget session is when the membership of the Management Council would be adjusted. And so until that time, it shall remain as it is, but that's what we did starting on page 3, line 12. And then on page 3, line 16, deleting January 1 of 2023 and inserting January 1 of 2022, which was more of a technical correction than anything. But Mr. Speaker, that is the change in the bill. So I would stand for any question. Thank you.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I stand on in support of the conference committee report. I think that allows the current members to serve up until the time of the next session, which would be the planning stage. And then we would shift to the next, to whatever we get after that, right? So we'd re-choose that one position on the House side. So stand on and support. I think it's a good compromise.
Thank you. Representative Yin, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So members, I'm going to ask you all to vote no. I think this bill could easily pass again in the budget session. I don't think we necessarily need it right now. And the reason I would ask you to vote no instead of just having us change Management Council in the middle of the budget session is that the fact of the matter is our Management Council currently is 7 members on this chamber and 6 members in the other chamber. And right now with the chairman being of the other chamber. And so if we change Management Council in the middle, essentially what we're saying is after the budget session, we're going to have a 5-5 Management Council and then have their chairman still be a Management Council chairman for the rest of the year. And that essentially allows them to do planning for the next legislative session. So the session we're in now, but 2 years, with an even split with them as the chairman instead of the 1-1 chairman as the bill originally intended after it left our chamber. So I'm not sure why, again, they didn't specify in the conference committee why they decided to move the date up at all. But in my estimation, my guess is that it's because of evening the split of management council earlier rather than letting us do what our session was, which is a 7-member management council from the House and a 6 from the Senate. So again, I'll ask you to vote no. We can pass it in the budget session. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Larson, Dan, online.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Been sitting out on the debate. We really need to pass this bill. We've been working on it for so long. We're so close. Vote aye. This 5-5 membership will be okay. The chairmanship isn't that big a deal. Let's vote aye on this joint conference. They did a good job.
Thank you. Representative Jennings, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a good compromise that's laid out. Went through two meetings and came out with a good deal. I'm going to ask you to vote aye. Thank you.
Any other members? First time in the chamber, online. First time, seeing no one. Second time. So members, we are voting on conference committee number 2, report to House Bill 36. House Bill 36, a majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
Aye.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt excused. Clausen. Clifford.
No.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air excused.
Aye, I'm here.
Air, aye. Flitner. Flitner. Excused. Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan.
Aye.
Haroldson.
Aye.
Harshman. Heiner.
Aye.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kinner. Kinner. Excused. Knapp.
Aye.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Martinez. Nyman. Nyman. Excused. Newsom. Excused. Nicholas. Oakley.
Aye.
Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman excused. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe.
Aye.
Schwartz.
No.
Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stiff.
Aye.
Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washut.
Aye.
Western.
Aye.
Wharf. Wharf. Excused. Williams, excused. Wilson. Wilson. Winter. Yen. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Banks, I'd like to confirm your vote. Banks is no. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 42 aye, 9 no, 9 excused.
by your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee number 2 report on House Bill 36. Chairman Harshman. Chairman Harshman, you have just a moment. So members, we're waiting on one Senate File 121. And that's being processed right now. I guess the Joint Conference Committee report is being processed right now. So that'll leave Senate File 75, protective orders amendments, as not being resolved this session. And 127, Senate File 127, I guess there's not an interest in continuing that discussion. And then House Bill 173, I'll just make a couple of comments, which is the school finance bill. There was, as some of you probably followed and the public may have followed the discussions in conference committee. And we thought we left the door open, and our colleagues down the hall thought it was closed. And after visiting pretty extensively with my counterpart in the Senate about a path forward, as you know, as the colleagues in this House know, we sent down what we thought was a balanced approach that had both getting the value, as much value as we could out of the federal funds, the ARPA funds. It did deal with some cuts, primarily to insurance, and then it had some revenue, including, as you know, a tax. We thought we'd gotten quite a ways down that road. We came to a place where the diversions became quite problematic, at least for their part of their chamber. And there was some not misunderstanding, but some challenges with getting the value out of the federal funds. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this thing. We're not done with it. We're done with it for this session. The federal funds certainly are on the table for our special session, because that's exactly why we convene in that special session. And the timing and the use of those funds, they're not going to be out the door, is my firm belief. Revenues, of course, that's an ongoing discussion, always will continue to be. And then the foundation or school foundation program, we do have the cuts in on the healthcare side. That's in our current House Bill 1. It's current law. And so we'll look beyond that. So I don't want anybody in this body. I thank the folks on recalibration. I thank our education committee. I thank the members of this body who worked hard, debated hard, looking for that right place, that right bowl of porridge, that right bed, that right chair, and sometimes we just don't get to that right place all at the same time. So I thank you for your work. I applaud you for those hard efforts. And to the citizens of Wyoming, we value education. We value our educators. We value the schools and the things they bring to our communities. And we'll continue to work to have the quality education system we have and improve upon that, and understand how we can continue to fund it into the future. So those discussions are not over. They may be for this little episode, but this state, 66 legislatures have come before us, 65 before us. If they'd solved all the problems, we wouldn't need a 66th. So we're here. We're not going to solve every problem. We're going to continue to work on them, going to continue to learn more. And so I thank you for all your efforts on that. So members, with that, we're going to stand at ease, waiting for this last Senate file, and then the governor's closing remarks and 2 enrolled acts. So we're waiting on 2 Senate files to come down so we can sign them. And so we're going to stand at ease until 6:30. We'll stand at ease until 6:30. Thank you.
Kind of.
All right, members, come back to order. Welcome back to the House Chamber and to our members that are joining us virtually, actually virtually. Thankful for you all being with us, sticking it out. So messages from the Senate.
Message 463. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 121, State Funds, Investments, and Distributions. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 21, noes 7, excused 2. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 466. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 36, Management Council Membership. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 2 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 25, noes 3, excused 2. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
We're at that order of business of consideration of joint conference committees. The first one for consideration is Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on Senate File 121. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move concurrence on Joint Conference Committee Number 1, the Senate File 121. I'll turn the explanation over to the good representative from the Trona County.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, just a quick point of privilege. I appreciate former President of the Senate, good senator from, I think it's 27 from Casper. He's my senator, did yeoman's work on this and worked to compromise him. And the good chairman of House Appropriations from here in Cheyenne, who they worked really hard on this bill. I think 119, 120, and 121 are going to continue to build on our state's wealth, and that we can continue to grow our opportunities in the future as we modernize these and move forward into the interim. So members, I appreciate your consideration and your aye vote on this concurrence. And to quickly go through it, really, I think there were several amendments to it. It's gone back and forth, but really what we're doing is really cleaning up archaic language all throughout the green books on all of our funds, whether they're constitutional funds, statutory funds. So earnings and income, we put into statute the Meyer rule, named after former Treasurer Meyer, on how we treat realized and unrealized losses and how we carry those forward, Mr. Speaker. And so that's going to be really important in the future. Then the last part of the bill talks about a study as we move forward. Our sister states in Utah, who came into the union similar time as us, have gone back through Congress, changed some of the federal act of admission, changed their constitutions to allow more of this endowment approach so we can get higher returns, more predictable returns. So your Capital Finance Committee wants to study that. New Mexico's done this, other states. So we can continue to modernize on all these billions of dollars of wealth that we've saved over the years and continue to leverage that for our people. And then in the middle, Mr. Speaker, really, these are the last two issues. One is what to do with the 1% statutory severance tax, and then what to do with the spending policy on our major funds. And so the spending policy, as I'd mentioned on this floor, Mr. Speaker, one of my top three regrets, I can't remember 1 and 2 right now legislatively, but where we started to ratchet down on that. And we've since learned more as you go back through, because the spending policy delivers less of today's income to today's people. And then it creates a tip in the reserve. And this tip thing doesn't happen every year because some years you don't have as good a return. So it really doesn't grow the corpus. The key is the 1%. So we've restored the spending policy to the 5%. And then the 1%, I think the good former president of the Senate did the work on this. And so there's going to be about an 8-year 50-50 split between these two corpuses, common school account within the permanent land fund and the permanent trust fund. And that's his math. And I think he's right on this, because about 1/3 of this severance is school mineral severance. And there hasn't been 1 penny of this go to the common school account. So we're going to try to make that up in the next 7-8 years with a 50-50 split. Then I think going forward, it goes to a 2/3, 1/3 split to grow both of these permanent funds into the future. So we think we'll probably add 700-800 million or more to the common school account. By the time the fifth graders out there in Wyoming schools are seniors graduating. So, and that'll make a return year after year in perpetuity. And that's really, I think, it. Stand for any questions. So I think this is really a nice gem of a bill. And I think, again, I appreciate the good chairman of our appropriations, chairman of Senate appropriations for all their good work, and everyone else on the conference committee as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? Any discussion? On Joint Conference Committee number 1 on Senate File 121. Representative Gray, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'd encourage a no. It was really a pleasure to be on this conference committee, and but I did not sign it. So a couple things here. One is the position of the House, which was adopted, which was 2/3 general fund, 1/3 school foundation program account for the 1%. That was eliminated entirely. And so that was the key change over here. And so we're removing all that liquidity and we're putting that into statute. So to give some idea of this trade-off that is sort of what's contemplated in the bill, placing the 1% OPSTA into permanent funds versus reversing the step down of the spending policy, which is a little bit complex, but it's the percentage that is taken out of that account. I mean, basically it's an $80 million versus $90 million trade-off starting in 2025. But 2023 and 2024 are totally taken off the table. So we're removing that liquidity for 2023 and 2024 for schools, for needed things in our state, for this quote unquote compromise that is setting in 2025. Ultimately, the thing I struggle with this though is that this 1% account, this 1% severance tax amount, I think the ultimate compromise is to segregate it into a separate fund, invest it in non-liquid assets and that are going to have just as good of return as the permanent fund, but are very difficult to cash out. But if we are in an environment, a crisis where we do need to cash out, we will be able to. But the other body is insistent that it has to be put in the permanent fund, speeding us up into a crisis. And they think a crisis is going to be good for their position. And I don't think it is. In a crisis, we're going to have higher taxes. In a crisis, there's going to be a lot of pain. And it's not a good thing. We should be wanting to prevent a crisis from happening. Okay. But this policy of just plopping in 80 million that is not constitutionally contemplated for the permanent fund with the purpose of achieving these investment earnings, you could do that anyway by creating a separate account again and investing that way, but not putting it in the inviolate account. And that's the ultimate compromise. And look, I understand the speaker, he's passionate about this, but if this had been done when we had this 400% increase in revenues, we could have had the investment earnings, plus we could have had billions of dollars to be able to prevent a tax increase for the schools deficit that has been created. And look, I understand that it was difficult to stop a spending wave when you have a 400% increase in revenue. So I understand why they did that. But there is a real middle ground position here that isn't even being contemplated that is good for our state. And the reality is in the budget, 2022 is already handled on the 1%. And yes, 2023, the 1% goes away, but we can have that discussion in the special session. We can have that discussion in the budget session. And I think ultimately we can work towards this position that I think is reasonable, where we move the 1% into an account that is invested, but it is not an inviolate account. But fiscal year 2022 is already being handled on this 1% issue. And the step down doesn't go into effect until 2025. So why are we doing this right now? It doesn't make sense to me. I know there's a lot of people passionate about it, but there's a lot of things that have gotten into this bill that I don't think are good, and we should give it another run. So I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I honestly just have a question for the Joint Conference Committee. And I'd be curious to understand a bit better about the relationship of this bill with what's going on in the budget bill, and then in future budgets as we move forward with this in statute. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go online now. Representative Stith and then Representative Hallinan. Representative Stith, first time.
Mr. Speaker, yeah, 2 questions for the good chairman of revenue. By putting all of the 1% severance tax into permanent funds by statute, then I take it that means that the executive will not be able to profile those funds, and we won't be able to spend those funds as part of our budget. And the second follow-on question is, by putting the 1% severance tax essentially for the foreseeable future into permanent funds by statute, doesn't that, without solving our $300 million annual structural deficit in K through 12, doesn't that just make it more likely that we're going to have to, raise taxes sooner to fill that structural deficit?
Thank you very much. Representative Hallinan. Representative Stith, were you done? I just want to make sure in case we didn't lose you.
Yes, no, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Your hand was still up. I just want to make sure I didn't cut you off inadvertently. Representative Hallinan, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really fail to see how this represents any kind of a compromise between the House position and the Senate position. The House position was that this 1% sales tax was to be put into the reserve accounts for both the common school account and the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund account, reserve account. Both of these funds would be available for use by the legislature to pay for the deficit that we have right now in the general fund and also the school account fund. So there's really no compromise in this. In fact, just the opposite. They're talking about putting 8 years more of the OPST into the inviolate account, making it unavailable for the legislature to use. So I don't see how this represents any kind of a compromise between the House position and the Senate position. And I really do like the idea that my colleague from the center of the state has for having these funds put into another reserve account that would be somewhat unavailable for average day-to-day spending, but would be available for emergency spending, available to our legislature to use. And I think that the fact that these funds would be unavailable for 8 years, possibly $800 million, that in addition to the 200 or the 128 million that we took in the budget this year and put it into the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School account this year. I think that is almost $1 billion that we're talking about putting into these inviolate accounts and taking it away from the use of our legislature for needed spending. And I think that is an unwise decision. So I would call for a no vote on this Joint Conference Committee bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On in favor of concurrence, ladies and gentlemen. So we've heard a lot of discussions about the pros and cons of this, but what has not been brought up yet is we literally have $1 billion in our checkbook over the next 2 years to take care of any type of deficit that's confronting us. So it's remarkable, and we need to use it, and we need to use it wisely. But so with those, what should we do with those if we supplant dollars or we move from account to account? Well, we should save it. We should put it into the permanent funds so that we can then us and our grandchildren and their great-grandchildren will be able to live off of the severance taxes, because those severance taxes come from oil and gas, right? And coal, all diminishing resources. So when those resources are gone, who's going to be paying the bills in Wyoming? And the answer is the Permanent Mill Trust Fund and the Common Schools account. So this is our opportunity by using these ARP dollars to help supplant our budget shortfall on the school side and prepare for our future. So it makes absolutely perfect sense to me. So let's talk about the 1% severance tax. We've only intercepted that for about 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years. Before that, it all would go into the permanent fund, permanent mill trust fund. And that's why we have a $9 billion amount in that, because we captured this severance tax and saved it. What we do here is we say, well, is it more important to put it in the permanent mill trust fund, or is it more important to put it in our common schools account where our deficit is? So half of it is going to go into the common schools account, and that's going to turn into $20 or $30 million a year over forever, not just for one biennium, just to make up one-time shortfall, forever. So why wouldn't we do that when we have this opportunity to do it? And let's talk about those shortfalls. Well, we don't have a shortfall anymore on the general fund side. We don't. We have over a $50 million surplus. And if oil stays at over $55 a barrel, we're going to have over $120 to $130 million surplus at the end of the biennium. So in those funds, we can help shore up education if we need to, and we may need to, but we will have funds to do that. Answering the question about what this does with the budget, it doesn't impact the current budget at all in terms of where the OFSA dollars goes. And by the way, we still have $180 million sitting in that OFSA account because we didn't do anything with it. So we have extra dollars of our own to help take care of our budgetary shortfall on the education side if we need to use it. So, I mean, to us, it made perfect sense and was the logical conservative thing to do. So on and in favor.
Thank you. Other members, first time, Representative Walters, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to offer that the current law actually states that this money does go into the PMTF corpus. What has occurred over a few budgets and in the last several years is the legislature has intercepted that money before it got to the corpus and utilized it because we had cash needs. And so what this change does is simply say, instead of sending all of it to the corpus of the PMTF, we're going to send, for the next few years, half of it to the corpus of the PMTF and half of it to the corpus for the common school account. So that's how we start to address our issues on the school side. And I would point out that 20 years ago, about 5% of our budget came from investment income off of the PMTF. Today, it's over 20%. If we had a fund on the side of education as large as we do in the PMTF, we would be seeing that kind of revenue coming into education off of our investment income. So this is a really good balance between spending today for today's people while also still allowing for good funding to go towards the future. This is a balance that every trust really looks to achieve, is how do we access and maximize dollars for today's generation and dollars for future generations. And that's what this attempts to do. And I think it does a good job of that. So definitely on and for the compromise. And again, the growth in the PMTF over the last 20 years, it has really came from the fact that this 1% has gone into the corpus. And so it's been good for Wyoming, and it will continue to be good for Wyoming, both on the general fund side and on the common school side. So I encourage an aye vote on the conference committee report, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chairman Zwanitzer, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quickly, I'll do the Cliff Notes version for those of you at home. The most important thing about, it's a good amendment, it's a good compromise, but the most important thing is the spending policy account fix. As the good chairman of revenue said, it probably was his biggest mistake in 15 years since him and I have been here. And it puts it back to where it needs to be in statute, and it's a win. The other stuff on, where the OBSTA goes for 8 years, that's kind of a red herring, because for the past 3 of the past 4 years, we've done notwithstanding in the budget. We're going to send it, well, we'll all be here next year. So in the budget next year, I'll bet you we'll have a notwithstanding and ship it to wherever it needs to go. So don't get caught up in the 8 years and where all that goes. It's really tough to change the spending policy account and a notwithstanding in the budget. We can do that. So that's a really important thing. That's why it's a good amendment. We gave up some ground, I know, but it's the overall legislative statutory change that this brings is important. Everything else we can fix in the budget with a notwithstanding, and I'm sure the good chairman of appropriations will do so next year.
Representative Obermuller, first time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support what the good representative from Cheyenne just said. I think there's enough good things in this bill that we need to advance it and live for another day to talk about how we allocate this money. I mean, this isn't the end of the line in that discussion, but there's pieces of this that are important. So I'll be an aye today on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members for their first time? We're on first time. First times. First time, second times. Second time. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple points I want to respond to. One is this point about the purpose of the trust. So the Constitution sets aside 1.5% to be placed in the permanent fund. That's in the Constitution. The 1% that we're talking about right now, the writers of that provision understood should be part of the discretion of the legislature. This whole thing about the budget next year and this point on notwithstanding statements, you can put a notwithstanding statement on the spending policy, okay, in the budget. You can do a notwithstanding statement on anything, including the OBSTA, okay? So that applies on both sides. They could do a notwithstanding on the spending policy starting in 2025. They can do a notwithstanding statement on the 1% diversion. The 1% diversion is a creation of the budget. And I'm telling, and I want to impart to you with extreme passion that if this 1% gets put into the statute, it's going to be much more difficult in the budget negotiations to do a notwithstanding statement on that 1%. 2022, fiscal year 2022, we just handled. In the next budget, we can handle the 1% there, but if it gets put into statute, the ball game is going to change. It's going to be a different situation from the past. The ultimate reality of how we get a final result that we want is to put these funds again in a segregated account and invest those funds. When we get a win-win, we get the investment earnings, plus in a crisis, we're able to pull these back. If we had that now from the last 2 decades, we would have been able to last for 3 or 4 decades. You can still invest without putting this into an inviolate account. And you can put language into statute that says the treasurer must do that. And I don't understand why it's an all or nothing deal here where there's only one way to invest earnings, and that's to plop it into the inviolate account. You can invest earnings in another account. It's possible. So there's a lot of arguments that aren't making sense here. And ultimately, I would pose to you, because I've talked with members on the other side, this speeds up getting to a crisis. We don't want that. And I think many political ideologies can agree with that. It's not going to be good for anybody, okay? The spending policy, that can live another day. The step down doesn't happen until 2025. That can be done with a notwithstanding statement. But this obsta diversion, if that's placed into statute, it's going to be very, very difficult to reverse. Thank you. So urge a no on the conference committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Any other member? Representative Hallinan, second time. Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that it would be beneficial if everybody would look at that joint conference committee that happened on our video. You'd see that the end of the hall, they're interested only in inviolate funds. That's the way they look at things. That was their position on our budget bill also. I think we need to let them know that we disagree with that our inviolate funds are not the only reason to use money. Our money ought to be available for our common purposes, our current purposes. And they want to put all this money into the inviolate funds. I think the ideas of our colleague from the center of the state are good, that we would take this money and put it into a separate account that is available in an emergency. Right now, we have an emergency. The money that we get from I guess it's ARPA, the Biden money, I think that is going to be something that we might benefit from, but we can take some of that money and put it into these permanent funds if you want to. But this obsta money is money that we should use for our current needs. And for that reason, I am against this joint conference committee report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Stiff.
Mr. Speaker, just a couple of quick points. If we vote against this, then what happens with the 1% severance tax for the fiscal year starting July 1, or starting April 1, actually, is that April 1 of 2021, which has already passed, is that half of it goes into the permanent mill trust fund and the other half goes into the legislative stabilization reserve account, which is available. So if we do nothing, half of the 1% goes into permanent mill trust fund, half goes into the LISRA, right? One feature of SF 121 we've not really talked about much, but it's worth noting that there are some good things in this bill. Clearly, fixing the spending policy amount's a good idea, I believe. The so-called Meyer rule, we really haven't talked about what that means, but it does put in statute and at least makes it clear that if there's a severe downturn in the market and we don't have any capital gains for a year and we have a lot of capital losses, that the Meyer rule would nonetheless, the SF 121 would make it legal for the state treasurer to nonetheless distribute, a couple $100 million of interest and dividends. So, which is kind of a strange thing. It's sort of the way things have been working since 2009. Whether that's a good thing or not is sort of an interesting question, but it would resolve it by statute. That's another feature of this bill that's actually quite significant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members for their second time? We're on second time. Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in favor of the Joint Conference Committee. I'll admit, I agree with my good colleague from the center of the state who spoke with extreme passion. There are lots of issues that I think that we need to address as we move on. But if we followed that line of reasoning, we'd end up with another coffee can. We don't need another coffee can. We just don't. We need to address the existence of SIPAs and accounts with no money in them that are sub-accounts. We can do that next year. It's our obligation to understand how these accounts work, what fills them, and how we spend from them. I have been somewhat ambivalent about this bill, but it has moving parts along with 173 that didn't pass, as well as the budget. But this right now, I think, is the correct solution for the coming year and to put this solution into our statutes. So thank you. I'm in favor of the Joint Conference Committee.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time? We're on second time. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate everybody's great debate and lots of questions. Really, we're looking at two pots of money in this bill, in addition to all the good stuff on language and all those things, but they're both worth about 80 million a year. One's called the 1% severance, statutory severance account, and one's called the SPA step down spending policy from 5 to 4. They're worth about 80 million each. And it's going to start on the general fund in 23-24, next budget. Okay. Now, if we do nothing and we say no to this compromise, the current law, and I think there were folks confused. I heard 3 representatives. The current law is they will both go to permanent savings. 160 million more a year is going to permanent savings. If we pass this bill, we're going to divide that in half. The SPA step down will not happen, and we're going to have 80 million available each year to spend on today's citizens. That other 80 million, yeah, we couldn't change that. That's in the green books. We did change, however, to put some of it in the school account, to grow that account. So we couldn't do it all. But I tell you what happens with this 1%. What happened in this budget? Good Chairman of Probst, you all heard of the OPSTA account. That's just a budget account. And they said, notwithstanding this 1% to permanent, we're going to create a little liquid account. And we can always do that. The spending policy is tougher. So if you vote no, you're going to plop, was the word used. You're going to plop more money than has ever been plopped into permanent funds if you vote no. If you vote aye and you vote yes on this concurrence, you're going to cut that in half. 80 million will be available of today's investment earnings for today's people. That's a 1/2 cent sales tax. You put that in the Department of Health, it doubles to 160. And so again, really appreciate your aye vote, but understand the current statute, all 160 is going to permanent savings locked away forever. An aye vote, we cut that in half. Half of that will be available for our people today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other members for their second time? So members, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1 to Senate File 121. Majority of the members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
No.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt excused. Clausen. Clifford.
Aye.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air. Air. Excused. Flitner.
Aye.
Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan.
No.
Haroldson.
No.
Harshman. Heiner.
No.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Excused. Kenner.
Not pushing him too hard either, because
Kenner excused.
he's independent. He doesn't have a bunch of shareholders to answer to like.
Someone needs to mute their mic.
Yeah.
Kenner excused. Knapp.
No.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
No.
McGuire,
Aye.
Martinez, Nyman, Newsom excused, Nicholas, Oakley,
Aye.
Obermueller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman excused,
had your background.
Patman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe,
Aye.
Schwartz,
Aye.
Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith,
Aye.
Stivar, excused, Sweeney, Walters, Washit,
Aye.
Western, excused, Worf, Williams excused, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote, are there any changes? Clausen, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 34 aye, 16 no, 10 excused.
Members, by your vote, you have voted to adopt Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on Senate File 121. We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. First enrolled act for consideration is Enrolled Act 95.
House Enrolled Act 95 being original House Bill 92. An act relating to the revision of statutes and other legislative enactments, correcting statutory references and language resulting from inadvertent errors and omissions in previously adopted legislation, amending obsolete references, repealing provisions, specifying applicability, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 95 being original House Bill 92. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 96.
House Enrolled Act 96 being original House Bill 36, an act relating to the legislature, amending provisions relating to the selection of management council members, specifying applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 96 being original House Bill 36. I have so signed. Members, we'll stand at ease for just a moment. We're going to see if our chief executive could address the body. So we'll stand at ease for 5 minutes. So at 7:30, we'll reconvene. Stand at ease. The House will please come to order. House will please come to order. That was a fast 5 minutes, but Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that a committee of two be appointed to inform the governor that the House is ready to adjourn and to escort His Excellency the Governor to the House.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. Representative Summers, Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley, please inform the governor the House's representatives ready to adjourn, and please escort His Excellency the Governor, Mark Gordon, to the House chamber. All right. House, please come to order. Sergeant of Arms, I guess we already got the governor in here. Go ahead, do your part, Sergeant of Arms. Follow the script.
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure to announce His Excellency, the Governor of Wyoming, Mark Gordon.
Governor Gordon, we welcome you to the House of Representatives. Please impart upon us your words of wisdom.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an honor to be here and indeed a pleasure to be back in this chamber with people in it. And I just thank you for your service. I have to say, as I was thinking about what to say, it is truly remarkable where we've come from in the last year. If you think about it, from having this chamber leave to the eventual steps that we had to take and the virtual sessions, it is truly remarkable. And I'm very proud to say that today, just to tell you where we are, today, just moments ago, I was able to announce that Cheyenne Frontier Days will indeed go forward. And I can say that because our state fair last year was one of 3 in the country, was able to proceed without incident with a full midway and all. And that's because of the people of Wyoming. And when I think about what that means, and Mr. Speaker, you and I have spoken about this a lot, I think about the legacy of a citizen legislature. You know, we aren't professional politicians. We are people who go home, raise kids, go see our grandparents. We're people that have jobs in all sectors of this economy. And our forebears, when they built this Constitution, they recognized the value of having a citizen legislature, one that truly represented the needs and wishes and interests of the people. Now, they also thought, you know, we're going to keep our limits on how many days the legislature meets. But we don't really trust that governor either, because he can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And so we're going to put 4 other executives there. And just because we want to make sure that our government's limited and that we truly respect the balance of power, we're going to make sure that that governor can't do anything kind of nutty or crazy without those other 4 and without some agreement from the legislature. And so when I talk to my colleagues, I say, I come from a state where we have a citizen legislature and a governor that can't get away with really very much of anything. And I'm proud to represent that state. It is truly a unique piece of our state. What I'd like you to do, if you can, is I'd like you to look to the back of the room at my staff. And I want to thank them for their incredible work this session. And I want to tell you, every single one of them is proud to be able to serve with you. And so my message to you, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for giving up those days. Thank you for being here. And thank you for living each day with courage. This is a great state. You know that. We know that. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk with a bunch of senators from all sides of the aisle, from all walks of life, from all professions, from all ages, and from all political persuasions. And we sat and we talked about the Wyoming that we all grew up in. Mr. Speaker, you and I grew up in that. You know, we knew that our parents had come from the Depression. They had seen war. They had seen tough times. They had seen tough times as tough as what we're facing these days. And yet with the grit that is part of the Wyoming spirit, they set forth and they made a state that we could benefit from. And we have that obligation to make sure that our kids can benefit from that as well. My friends, I know this has been a frustrating session in some ways. I know you've done some great bills. And I know the work that we had a year ago, over a year ago, 2 years ago in October, that we had last January, that we had last month, and this week is all the same. The 66th legislature has a chance to make a mark on that. So as you go home, and I, again, thank you for being here. As you go home, please think about the fact that we are friends. We are family. We have a chance to make this state even better than it is. And this is the greatest state in the nation. It is so because we know each other. And like every family, we have our spats, we have our fights. So things like education, I know, big frustration, left empty. We will fix it. We will move forward. Our kids are too valuable. The way our kids are raised, the way they look at the future, those are things that only Wyoming can produce. And each of you here contribute to that. So with my heart, thank you. God bless. Thank you for your work. I look forward to working with you over the next couple of years, but please remember we're a citizen legislature. Let's not get to the point of doing this every week or every year, every month. Let's think about the way we can work together. And I really have enjoyed. It has been an honor and truly a pleasure to work with you. So thank you. God bless.
So Governor, on behalf of the House, thank you. He doesn't need an escort. I guess we're just throwing him out. Representative Olson and Yin, please escort His Excellency the Governor from the House chamber. And Governor, I think I heard you say, as you go home, and maybe it was please go home. But we do appreciate you being here. We appreciate all the work you've done. We appreciate your staff. God bless you. God bless the continued work you do on behalf of Wyoming. And we are going home soon. Thank you, Governor. And I might respectfully say also thank you to our First Lady, Jenny Gordon, obviously one of the finest First Lady in the state, in the nation. So thank you, Ms. Jenny. All right, thank you, members. Members, we have one bill we're waiting on, the bill we just did concurrence on. It's in the Senate side. It's awaiting action on their end. It'll come to our end for signature. So if you'll just stand at ease, please.
There's an open mic in the chamber.
The House will please come to order. So members, we thank His Excellency, the Governor, for his remarks earlier. And we're just awaiting the final bill, which I've heard is a fairly good bill. But I do want to maybe say just a couple words. First of all, we do appreciate the governor and his staff, the judiciary, all the support of the executive branch, the folks that took care of us while we were here, our staff. Let's just stop for a minute, stand up and thank our staff, who we've thanked before, but let's thank them again. Thank you very much. We do appreciate you. You make what we do here possible, both sometimes in plain sight and oftentimes behind the scenes. So our LSO staff down the hall, appreciate you. I'm sure some of you are still listening in, and I'm sorry for that. And finally, there's sometimes we get up on the floor and we'll say things in a mic, but he'll somebody else say something on a mic, or maybe at the other end. We're going to go home. We're going to go back to our families and go to our communities. Let's stop, reach out to each other, make sure we continue to work with each other for the betterment of Wyoming, for the betterment of grandchildren, great grandchildren. Chairman Paxton has great grandbabies here. Make your heart cry. Take care of those folks that lost loved ones. Think about those folks that just had surgery on one of our members here. So. In fact, I'm going to tell you how bad it was with the education bill. I just wanted to leave you with something to smile about. That education bill, look, we learned a lot. This body learned a lot through this whole education discussion. But the choice was to one of our conference committee members, you can go to conference committee, you go have a root canal. And Representative Simpson went and had a root canal this afternoon. That's the honest truth. A root canal. Representative Simpson had a root canal, so he can handle about anything, plus conference committee. So with that, we appreciate all you guys. I appreciate all you've done. And Mr. Majority Floor Leader, let's take this thing home. Oh.
You gonna sign that?
Read the script, Barlow. We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. First enrolled act 74.
Senate Enrolled Act 74, being original Senate File 130. An act relating to charter schools, revising the process for approval and renewal of charter schools, providing for authorization of charter schools by a school district or the state loan and investment board, revising the operation of charter schools, authorizing fees, specifying funding, making conforming changes, repealing conflicting provisions, specifying limitations, requiring a study, requiring a report, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 74, being original Senate File 130. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 75.
Senate Enrolled Act 75, being original Senate File 121. An act relating to public funds, modifying spending policies and other investment and revenue distribution provisions, repealing the legislative deficit council or deficit control account funded from the strategic investments and projects account, revising account distributions as specified, redistributing certain severance taxes, repealing obsolete and inconsistent provisions, providing for a study, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 75, being original Senate File 121. I have so signed. Congratulations, Chairman Harsh and Perkins, right? All right. Any further business for the good of the order? Any privileges?
Right here.
Anyone else online? Oh, brother? Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Privilege of the floor.
Please proceed, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to ask the body to give you a round of applause for your great work this session and the hard job you put into it. So just thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So thank you, members. I think if former speaker said, teamwork makes the dream work, and there's 60 on this team. We're ably assisted by another team of professionals, both here in the chamber and down the hall, and our LSO staff. So Mr. Majority Floor Leader, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem's here, Minority Floor Leader, Whips, thank you. All of this makes this work. All of you make this work. You're going to go out and do your committee work. Keep up the good work. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that bills currently pending before this body in the 66th Wyoming State Legislature 2021 general session be indefinitely postponed.
Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion of the Majority Floor Leader.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. By your vote, the motion has passed the House. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Senate be informed that the House of Representatives of the 66th Wyoming State Legislature general session is ready to adjourn.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. I direct the Chief Clerk, Wendy Harding, to inform the Senate that the House of Representatives general section of the 66th Wyoming Legislature is ready to adjourn. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the following. One, that the House of Representatives 66 Wyoming State Legislature General Session adjourn until a date and time which are determined jointly by the Speaker of the House of Representatives and by the President of the Senate for the purpose of calling the House and Senate back into session. Two, that if no such time is established before December 31st, 2021, the House of Representatives 66 Wyoming State Legislature General Session is adjourned, sign and die effect at 12 o'clock noon on that date, and the legislative budget session 66 Wyoming State Legislature shall convene on the 14th day of February 2022 at the hour of 10 o'clock a.m. Three, that the House of Representatives specifically concur in any identical motion adopted by the Senate. And four, that if the Senate fails to concur in that action, in the action of the House of Representatives under paragraphs 1 through 3 of this motion, by adopting an identical motion applicable to the Senate, the House of Representatives 66 Wyoming State Legislature General Session is adjourned, sign and die.
You've heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed,
Aye.
no. By your vote, the motion has passed the House. We are now at that order of business of reading and approval of the journal. Representative Haroldson. Representative Provenza.
Mr. Speaker, your Journal Committee reports at the Journal of April 7th, 2021 has been read, and I move that it be approved.
Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I second that motion.
There being no objection, the report is adopted. Subject to the conditions set forth by the Majority Floor Leader's motion, the House of Representatives 66 Wyoming Legislature General Session is adjourned and shall again convene the legislative budget session on the 14th day of February 2022 at the hour of 10 o'clock a.m. Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, at the end of this legislative session, we'd like to thank thee for the blessing of the health and endurance that we've had as members of this house. We're grateful for the hard work and dedication of our staff. And Father, we're grateful for each other, for the work and for the dedication and for the opinions that we each have. As we prepare to leave, we acknowledge that there is yet much to do, and we pray for inspiration to address the needs of this state. We pray for the safety of all of those who will be traveling home. And with this benediction, we pray that our efforts have been acceptable, and ask that if there are flaws, that thou would reveal how we should correct them, and ask that thou would bolster our courage to implement them if need be. As we reflect back on this time of year, We acknowledge and express gratitude for the atoning sacrifice of thy Son. And this is our prayer, and we say it humbly in his name, that of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Larson. Members, the House is adjourned.